The cabin of Flight 409 fell into a silence so heavy it felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the fuselage. 300 passengers froze, eyes darting between the cockpit door and seat 1A. Standing there, veins bulging in his neck, was Captain Geoffrey Halloway, a man who wore his 4 stripes like a crown and his prejudice like armor. Pointing a trembling finger at the calm, impeccably dressed black woman sitting quietly by the window, he barked the words that would destroy his life in less than an hour. "I don't care who you think you are. Get off my plane now." She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply adjusted her glasses, unlocked her phone, and dialed a number that wasn't 911. It was a number that only 5 people in the Western Hemisphere possessed. As she pressed the phone to her ear, she looked Halloway dead in the eye and whispered, "I was hoping you wouldn't do this, Geoffrey." Atlantic Sovereign Airways, ASA Flight 922 service from John F. Kennedy International to London Heathrow was already 45 minutes behind schedule. The delay was weather-related, a nasty squall line pushing off the Atlantic coast, but for Captain Geoffrey Halloway, it was a personal insult. Halloway was a relic of a bygone era. At 58, with silver hair swept back in a style reminiscent of 1960s cinema and a jawline that had survived 3 divorces, he was the airline's most senior pilot. He was a check airman, a designated examiner allowed to test other pilots, which gave him a god complex that had only swollen with age. He missed the days when pilots were treated like deities, when the cockpit was a boys' club, and when passengers did exactly what they were told without citing the customer bill of rights. Inside the cockpit, Halloway drummed his fingers on the thrust levers. First Officer David Chen, a sharp 30-year-old pilot, who Halloway privately referred to as the kid or the diversity hire, was running through the pre-flight checklist with mechanical precision. "Fuel load is confirmed at 68 tons. Chen said, his voice steady. "Passenger count is 284. We're just waiting on the final load sheet and the red carpet clearance." Halloway grunted, staring out at the rain-slicked tarmac. "This airline is going to hell, Chen. 45 minutes because the ground crew can't handle a little wind. In my day, we flew the plane. Now we just manage computers and wait for permission." He unbuckled his harness and stood up. "I'm going to stretch my legs and check the cabin. Make sure the galley doesn't look like a pigsty before we let the cattle on. Actually, captain boarding has already started for first class." Chen corrected him gently. Halloway scowled. "Nobody told me." He threw open the cockpit door, adjusting his tie. He stepped into the forward galley, expecting the usual deference from the flight crew. Jessica Miller, the lead flight attendant, was busy organizing the champagne flutes. She looked up, her smile tight. Everyone walked on eggshells around Geoffrey Halloway. "Captain," she nodded. "We have a VIP in 1A. Corporate flagged the seat but didn't give a name. Just a priority handling code." Halloway rolled his eyes. "Great. Another influencer or some rapper with too much carry-on luggage. If they give you any trouble about the seatbelt sign, let me know. I'm in no mood for entitlement today." He stepped past the galley curtain and into the first-class cabin. It was the pride of the Atlantic Sovereign Fleet leather sleeper pods, gold-trim lighting and a hush that smelled of expensive cologne. Only 1 passenger had boarded so far. She was sitting in seat 1A. She was a black woman, perhaps in her early 40s, wearing a tailored navy pantsuit that Halloway, with his limited fashion knowledge, couldn't identify as bespoke Italian silk. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant, severe bun. She wasn't on her phone taking selfies. She wasn't drinking the pre-flight champagne. She was reading a thick stack of documents, stamped with a red watermark. A pair of reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. A sleek leather briefcase sat on the ottoman in front of her. Halloway paused. Something about her irritated him immediately. It wasn't just that she was black, though in Halloway's private ugly worldview, he felt that people like her belonged in the back, not the front. It was her air. She possessed a stillness, a lack of awe. She didn't look up when the captain of the vessel walked in. She didn't seek his validation. He walked down the aisle, his heavy boots thudding on the carpet. He stopped right beside 1A. She turned a page, her eyes scanning the text. Halloway cleared his throat. Loudly. The woman stopped reading. She slowly rotated her head, looking up at him. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and completely unimpressed. "Good evening," she said. Her voice was low modulated and carried an accent that was hard to place transatlantic, perhaps with a hint of something Ivy League. "You're comfortable?" Halloway asked the question, sounding more like an accusation. "Quite. Thank you," she replied, turning back to her documents. Halloway bristled. He was the captain. She was supposed to be charmed, or at least deferential. He glanced at the documents she was reading. He couldn't make out the text, but he saw the logo of the airline Atlantic Sovereign and several charts that looked like fuel efficiency graphs. "Official business?" Halloway asked, stepping closer, invading her personal space. "Work," she said simply, not looking up. "That bag," Halloway pointed to her briefcase on the ottoman. "It needs to be stowed. Overhead bin, now." The woman looked at the briefcase, then back at him. "We are at the gate, Captain. The door is open. I am currently working. I will stow it before taxi." Technically, she was right, but Jeffrey Halloway hated being righted. "I don't like loose items in my first-class cabin." Halloway lied. "It's a safety hazard. Put it up, or I'll have the attendant do it." The woman sighed, a sound of profound patience wearing thin. She closed the folder. "Captain Halloway, is it?" She glanced at his wings. "I have flown this route 4 times this month. The briefcase is fine where it is until the main cabin door closes. Please focus on your pre-flight checks. We are already delayed." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica, the flight attendant, froze in the galley. Halloway's face went a shade of crimson. "Excuse me, you heard me," she said, her voice hardening. "You are 45 minutes behind. Focus on the weather patterns over the Atlantic, not my briefcase." Halloway leaned down, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Listen to me, lady. You might have bought a ticket, but you don't buy the authority. I am the captain of this vessel. You do what I say when I say it. And right now, I don't like your attitude." The woman took off her glasses. She looked at him with a mixture of pity and steel. "My attitude is not your concern, Captain. Your competence is. Now please step away." That was the spark. The match had been dropped in the gasoline. Halloway straightened up, adjusting his blazer. He wasn't just going to make her move the bag anymore. He was going to teach her a lesson. Halloway stormed back to the galley. Jessica was pretending to arrange napkins, her hands shaking. "Who is she?" Halloway demanded. "I want the manifest." Jessica handed him the tablet. "Name is Reynolds. Dr. Alicia Reynolds." "That's all it says, Captain. But like I said, there's a VIP code attached." "Doctor," Halloway scoffed. "Probably a doctorate in art history. VIP code just means she knows someone in marketing or used miles." He handed the tablet back. "She's disruptive." "Captain." Jessica blinked. "She's just reading." She refused a direct order from the captain regarding cabin safety. Halloway said, his voice rising so the passengers boarding behind him could hear. And she was belligerent. I don't want her on this flight. Captain, we're already late, Jessica whispered, trying to de-escalate. If we deplane a passenger, we have to pull her luggage. We'll lose our slot. We could be stuck here for another 2 hours. I don't care, Halloway snapped. I'm not flying across the ocean with a security risk sitting 5 feet behind me. He turned and marched back into the first-class cabin. By now, the other seats were filling up. A tech CEO sat in 2B. A famous Broadway producer was in 1F. They were all watching. Halloway loomed over seat 1A again. Alicia Reynolds had reopened her folder. She didn't look up. Ms. Reynolds, Halloway said, omitting her title on purpose. Dr. Reynolds, she corrected, not looking up. Grab your things, Halloway commanded. You're getting off. This time the entire first-class cabin went silent. The Broadway producer in 1F lowered his headphones. Alicia slowly closed the folder. She placed her hands on her lap. She looked at Halloway, and for the first time there was a flicker of genuine warning in her eyes. Captain Halloway, she said, her voice dangerously calm. I suggest you return to the cockpit and prepare for departure. You are making a mistake that you cannot undo. Are you threatening me? Halloway shouted. He wanted a scene. He wanted to show everyone who was in charge. You are refusing a crew member instruction. That is a federal offense. Now get up, or I will have law enforcement drag you off. On what grounds? Alicia asked. She remained seated, her posture perfect. Disruptive behavior, insubordination, being a threat to the safety of this flight. Alicia laughed. It was a dry, cold sound. I am a threat to the safety of this flight, Captain. I am likely the only reason this airline still has a safety rating. That's it. Halloway turned to the aisle. Jessica, call the gate agent. Get the port authority in here. I want this woman removed immediately. Sir, the man in 2B, the tech CEO, spoke up. Captain, she hasn't done anything. She's just sitting there. Halloway spun on him. Another word out of you, sir, and you'll be joining her. This is my plane. My rules. The tech CEO put his hands up and shrank back. The atmosphere was toxic. Passengers from economy were shuffling past, peering into the first-class section, whispering. What's going on? Is that the pilot? Why is he yelling at that woman? Alicia Reynolds did not move. She watched Halloway with the clinical detachment of a scientist, observing a rat in a maze. You really want to do this, Jeffrey? She asked softly. It's Captain Halloway to you, he sneered. And yes, I want you gone. 2 minutes later, the gate agent, a frazzled man named Peter, hurried onto the plane, followed by 2 Port Authority police officers. They looked uncomfortable. They saw a well-dressed woman sitting quietly and a red-faced pilot fuming in the aisle. What seems to be the problem, Captain? One of the officers asked. She is refusing to follow crew instructions and has become aggressive. Halloway lied smoothly. I want her removed. I am refusing transport. The officer looked at Alicia. Ma'am? Alicia looked at the officer. Officer, I have not raised my voice. I have not moved from this seat. The captain seems to have a personal issue with my presence. However, I know the protocol. If the captain refuses transport, you have to remove me. That's right. Halloway crossed his arms, smirking. Standard procedure. Alicia nodded. She stood up. She was tall, nearly as tall as Halloway. She smoothed her suit jacket. Very well, she said. She reached down and picked up her briefcase. She didn't look at the passengers, who were staring at her with sympathy and shock. She looked only at Halloway. "You have just authorized the removal of a passenger without cause based on personal bias," she said clearly so the witnesses could hear. "You have delayed a transatlantic flight. You have fabricated a security threat. Get off my plane." Halloway pointed to the door. Alicia smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "It's not your plane, Jeffrey. That's the part you forgot." She turned to the officers. "I'll come with you. But do not touch me." She walked off the plane with the grace of a queen entering exile. Halloway watched her go, feeling a surge of triumph. He had won. He had shown the diversity hire and the passengers who was the alpha. He turned to the cabin, clapping his hands. "All right, folks, show's over. We'll get her bags off and be in the air in 20 minutes. He marched back to the cockpit, feeling invigorated. Inside the jet bridge, however, the dynamic was shifting. Alicia Reynolds walked up the ramp, the officers trailing her. Once they reached the terminal gate area, she stopped. "Ma'am, we need to see your ID and take a statement," the officer said, pulling out his notepad. "No," Alicia said. She didn't sound like a passenger anymore. She sounded like a judge. "You need to wait right here." She pulled her phone from her pocket. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call customer service. She dialed a private number. It rang once. "Yes, Dr. Reynolds," a deep, gravelly voice answered. It was Arthur Sterling. Not a pilot, not a manager. Arthur Sterling was the CEO of the Global Sovereign Group, the parent company that owned Atlantic Sovereign Airways. "Arthur," Alicia said, her voice crisp, "I'm at JFK Gate 42. I've just been ordered off Flight 922 by Captain Jeffrey Halloway." There was a pause on the other end. A pause of pure horror. "He did what? He claimed I was a security threat because I didn't stow my briefcase while the cabin door was open. He was belligerent, erratic, and frankly, Arthur, he looked unstable. He grounded me." "Alicia." Arthur's voice was trembling. "Please tell me you didn't identify yourself." "I didn't," she said. "I wanted to see how he treated a regular passenger. Now I know." "I'm so sorry," Arthur said. "I'm looking at the roster now. Halloway. My God. He's due for retirement next year. Alicia, what do you want me to do? We can get you on the next flight, or I can send the corporate jet." "No, Arthur," Alicia said, watching through the glass as the ground crew began to open the cargo hold to find her luggage. "I don't want a jet. I want to finish my audit, and I want to do it on this plane." "Okay," Arthur said. "I'm patching in the station manager and the chief pilot now. Put me on speaker." Alicia held the phone out. She looked at the Port Authority officers and the gate agent, Peter. "You might want to listen to this." Back in the cockpit, Halloway was strapping himself in. "See that Chen Yu have to be firm. She was poison. Probably would have started a fight over the meal service." David Chen didn't answer. He was staring at the ACAR's screen, the digital communication system that linked the plane to the ground operations. "Captain," Chen said, his voice confused. "We just got a message from dispatch. It's a code 0. Halloway froze. Code 0 meant immediate stop. "Do not depart. Contact tower." It was reserved for bomb threats or terrorist attacks. "Code 0. Halloway frowned. "Is it a security threat?" "Did that woman leave something on board?" "I don't know, sir. It just says, hold position. Shut down engines. Remain at gate." "Jesus," Halloway swore. "She probably called in a hoax bomb threat. I knew it. Typical." Suddenly the cockpit phone rang. It was the interphone from the ground connection. Halloway grabbed it. "This is Captain Halloway. What is going on?" "We are ready to push." The voice on the other end wasn't the ground crew. It was a voice Halloway had only heard on training videos. It was Marcus Vance, the chief pilot of Atlantic Sovereign Halloway's boss's boss. "Halloway," Vance's voice was like ice. "Do not move that aircraft. Do not start the APU. Set the parking brake." "Chief," Halloway's confidence faltered. "We had a disruptive passenger. I had her removed. I think she might be escalating." "Shut up, Jeffrey," Vance snapped. The disrespect was shocking. "You didn't remove a passenger. You just removed the chairperson of the Oversight Committee." Halloway blinked. "The what?" "Dr. Alicia Reynolds. She is the newly appointed Senior Vice President of Global Operations. She is the one conducting the secret audit on pilot conduct and efficiency this month. She reports directly to the Board of Directors. She has the power to fire me, Jeffrey." Halloway felt the blood drain from his face. His hands went numb. "I didn't know. She didn't say. She didn't have to," Vance roared. "And you just threw her off the plane for attitude." "Jeffrey, listen to me closely. The CEO is on the other line. You are to unbuckle your harness. You are to grab your flight bag. You are to leave the cockpit immediately." "Leave, but who's going to fly the plane?" "You are relieved of command, effective immediately," Vance said. "You are suspended pending an investigation which, knowing Alicia, will be about 5 minutes long. Get off the plane, Halloway. Now!" The line went dead. Halloway sat there, the receiver humming in his hand. "Captain," Chen looked at him wide-eyed. Halloway couldn't breathe. The cockpit, usually his sanctuary, suddenly felt like a coffin. He had just kicked his boss, the woman who owned the sky he flew in, off her own plane. There was a knock on the cockpit door. Halloway opened it. Jessica stood there, looking pale. Behind her was the gate agent, Peter, and the 2 police officers. But this time they weren't looking for a passenger. They were looking at Halloway. "Captain Halloway." "Peter, the gate." Agent said, his voice shaking. "I've been instructed by corporate to escort you off the aircraft." "This is a mistake," Halloway stammered, standing up. "I can explain. She didn't follow protocol." "Sir." One of the officers stepped forward. "Please come with us. Don't make a scene." The irony hit Halloway like a physical blow. Don't make a scene. The exact words he would have used. He grabbed his hat and his flight bag. He walked out of the cockpit, his legs feeling like jelly. As he stepped into the first-class cabin, he saw her. Alicia Reynolds was back. She was standing by the door, her briefcase in hand. She had reboarded while he was on the phone. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. She simply stood there, radiating absolute authority. The passengers were watching. The tech CEO. The Broadway producer. The people in economy who were craning their necks. They all saw the captain, the man who had been a tyrant 10 minutes ago, being escorted off his own ship like a criminal. Halloway stopped in front of her. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to beg, to explain that he was having a bad day. Alicia raised a hand, stopping him. "Captain Halloway," she said, her voice loud enough for the cabin to hear. "I asked you to focus on your competence. You chose to focus on your ego. Atlantic Sovereign has zero tolerance for discrimination or abuse of power. You are no longer fit to wear those wings." She looked at the officer. "Escort him out. We have a schedule to keep." Halloway was led down the aisle, the walk of shame he had intended for her. He could feel the eyes of the passengers boring into him. Someone in the back booed. Then another. He stepped onto the jet bridge, the humid air hitting his face. As he walked up the ramp, he saw the ground crew staring at him. He knew in that moment it was over. 30 years of flying. The pension. The reputation. Gone. The silence that descended upon the cabin of Flight 922 after Jeffrey Halloway was escorted off was fundamentally different from the silence that had preceded it. Before, it had been a silence born of fear and awkwardness. Now it was a silence born of shock and a sudden, terrifying realization of shifting power dynamics. Dr. Alicia Reynolds did not immediately sit down. She stood at the front of the first-class cabin, where Halloway had loomed over her just minutes before. She took a deep breath, centering herself. The adrenaline was there coursing through her veins, but she had spent 20 years in high-stakes corporate boardrooms, negotiating mergers and diffusing hostile takeovers. A tantrum by an aging pilot was unfortunately not the most stressful thing she had encountered this quarter. She turned first to Jessica Miller, the lead flight attendant. Jessica was pressed against the galley bulkhead, looking as though she might faint. Her career, she assumed, was over just by proximity to the disaster. Alicia stepped into the galley. "Jessica," she said, her voice firm, but devoid of the aggression Halloway had used. Jessica jumped. "Yes, ma'am, Dr. Reynolds. I am so sorry. I should have—" "You did exactly what you were supposed to do in a situation involving an erratic captain," Alicia interrupted gently. "You tried to de-escalate, and when that failed, you followed the chain of command. You are not in trouble. In fact, I made a note of your professionalism when Halloway first approached me. You handled the champagne flute crisis admirably." Jessica let out a breath that sounded like a sob. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do." "Nobody knows what to do when the person in charge goes rogue," Alicia said. "Now I need you to pull yourself together. We have a full flight, and they are confused and anxious. I need the lead flight attendant back on duty. Can you do that?" Jessica straightened her spine, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "Yes, Dr. Reynolds. Absolutely." "Good. I'm going to address the cabin. Then we are going to prepare for our new captain." Alicia walked back into the aisle. She looked at the passengers in first class. The tech CEO in 2B was staring at her with open admiration. The Broadway producer in 1F gave her a subtle nod of respect. Alicia stopped at seat 2B. "Sir, I believe your name is Mr. Henderson." The tech CEO nodded quickly. "Yes, Bill Henderson." "Mr. Henderson, when Captain Halloway was threatening me, you were the only person who spoke up to defend me," Alicia said quietly. "You risked being removed yourself. I noted that courage, thank you." Henderson blushed slightly. It was wrong. He was out of line." "He was," Alicia agreed, "and now he is out of a job." She walked to the front of the cabin and picked up the PA interphone handset, located near the forward galley door. She didn't need permission. Her voice echoed through the entire aircraft from row 1 to row 45. "Good evening, passengers. This is Dr. Alicia Reynolds speaking. Some of you may have witnessed the unfortunate incident that just occurred in the forward cabin. Others may be wondering why our departure has been further delayed and why Captain Halloway has left the aircraft." She paused, letting the words sink in. She spoke with the cadence of someone used to commanding large rooms. Atlantic Sovereign Airways holds its staff to the highest standards of professionalism, safety, and respect. Unfortunately, Captain Halloway's conduct today fell severely short of those standards. His behavior toward me and his disregard for operational protocols was unacceptable. As the Senior Vice President of Global Operations for our parent company, I have relieved Captain Halloway of his command. A gasp rippled through the economy cabin. They hadn't known who she was. They just thought she was a rich lady who stood her ground. "We do not tolerate bullying. We do not tolerate discrimination, and we certainly do not tolerate egos that compromise the efficiency of our airline. I apologize sincerely for the delay and the distress this scene has caused you. We are currently securing a replacement captain. We expect to be underway within 45 minutes. I ask for your patience as we reset. The flight attendants will be coming through with water and service shortly. Thank you. She hung up the phone. As she walked back to seat 1A, a lone pair of hands started clapping in the economy section, then another. Within seconds, nearly the entire plane was applauding. It wasn't a raucous cheer. It was a steady, rhythmic clapping of validation. Alicia sat down in 1A. She didn't smile. This wasn't a victory. It was a necessary amputation of a diseased limb of the company. She picked up her reading glasses, opened her folder containing the fuel efficiency charts, and went back to work. The cockpit of Flight 922 was a place of profound stillness for about 15 minutes. First Officer David Chen sat in the right seat, staring straight ahead. He felt like he had survived a bomb blast. He had flown with Halloway for 6 months, enduring the constant belittling, the casual racism, the endless stories of the glory days. He had learned to keep his head down and just do the job. Today he had watched the giant fall, and he felt a complicated mix of relief and terror. He was currently the ranking officer on a plane with the corporate executioner sitting 10 feet behind him. The cockpit door opened. Chen almost jumped out of his skin. It wasn't a new captain yet. It was Alicia Reynolds. She stepped into the cockpit. It was a breach of protocol for a passenger to enter, but Chen knew better than to stop her. She was not a passenger. "First Officer Chen," she said, her voice calm in the tight space. "Dr. Reynolds." Chen gulped, unbuckling to stand up, but the space was too cramped. "Stay seated, David," she said, using his first name. She leaned against the jump seat, looking at the instrument panel. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, Ma'am. Just waiting for dispatch to advise on the new pilot in command." "I've already authorized it," Alicia said. "They're pulling Captain Robert Jenkins from reserve. He's on his way from the crew lounge now. Do you know him?" Chen let out an involuntary sigh of relief. "Bob Jenkins?" Yes, I know him. He's great. Very steady." "That's what I hear. He's also someone Halloway frequently referred to as a bus driver because he lacks the requisite ego for Halloway's club." Alicia looked at Chen intently. "David, I want to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Not the answer you think corporate wants." "Yes, ma'am." "Halloway's behavior today. Was it an anomaly? Was he just having a bad day?" Chen looked at his hands resting on the yoke. He knew this was the moment. He could protect the Brotherhood of Pilots, or he could tell the truth. He remembered Halloway calling him the diversity hire just 20 minutes ago. "No, ma'am," Chen said quietly. "It wasn't an anomaly. It was pretty standard for him. He ran the cockpit through intimidation. He didn't like input. He hated the modern protocols." Alicia nodded slowly. "Thank you for your candor, David. That matches the data I've been seeing in the anonymous reporting system reports that somehow never made it past the chief pilot's desk until recently." She put a hand lightly on the back of his chair. "You're a good pilot, David. Your pre-flight was flawless despite his distraction. When Captain Jenkins arrives, he'll reset the cockpit. Forget Halloway existed. Fly the plane. I'll be watching, but I'm not watching to find fault. I'm watching to see how good this airline can be when the toxic element is removed." "Yes, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you." 10 minutes later, Captain Robert Bob Jenkins arrived. He was a short, balding man with a paunch and a cheerful, slightly rumpled demeanor. He looked nothing like the cinematic image of a pilot that Halloway cultivated. He breezed into the cockpit flight bag over his shoulder. "Evening, David. Apologies for the delay, folks. Heard we had a bit of a personnel issue." He didn't ask for details. He didn't gossip. He saw Alicia in seat 1A as he passed, gave her a polite, professional nod, and closed the cockpit door. "All right, David," Jenkins said, settling into the left seat and adjusting the pedals. "Let's wipe the slate clean. Where were we on the checklists before the interruption?" The difference was night and day. Jenkins was collaborative. He asked for Chen's input on the weather routing. He spoke to the ground crew with respect. The tension in the cockpit evaporated, replaced by a quiet, professional hum. 50 minutes late, Atlantic Sovereign. Flight 9-2-2 pushed back from the gate. As the massive aircraft taxied to the active runway, Alicia Reynolds watched the tarmac lights streak past her window. She didn't feel triumph. She felt a deep sense of exhaustion. Halloway was just one man. How many more Halloways were buried in the ranks, protected by seniority? And an outdated culture of silence. The engines roared to take off power. The plane accelerated, generating the lift needed to break free of the earth. As the wheels left the ground, Alicia finally allowed herself to relax. The audit had begun with a bang, but now the real work was just starting. Jeffrey Halloway stood on the jet bridge as the door to Flight 922 closed, sealing him out of the world he had ruled for 3 decades. The sound of the heavy latch engaging felt like a prison door slamming shut. "This way, Mr. Halloway," Agent Peter said. The captain was gone. Halloway looked at the young man. Peter was nervous, sweating slightly. Halloway wanted to scream at him to demand respect, but the fight had drained out of him. The phone call from Marcus Vance, the chief pilot, a man Halloway had known for 20 years, a man he had shared drinks with, kept replaying in his mind. "You just removed the chairperson of the Oversight Committee." "I need my bag," Halloway muttered, realizing his overnight kit was still in the cockpit cubby. "We'll have it sent to operations, sir," Peter said. "We need to clear the area." The 2 Port Authority officers flanked him, not touching him, but close enough to show that he was in custody in all but name. They walked him up the ramp and into the blinding fluorescence of Terminal 4. The terminal was crowded. It was the evening rush. Hundreds of people were milling about, dragging roller bags, checking phones, eating pretzels. Usually when Captain Jeffrey Halloway walked through a terminal, it was an event. He walked with a swagger, his hat tucked perfectly under his arm, his uniform immaculate, the 4 gold stripes on his sleeves catching the light. People would part for him. Kids would stare. Women would glance his way. He was the king of this domain. Now he was walking flanked by cops. He wasn't wearing his hat. He had left it on the plane in his panic. His tie was loosened. He looked red-faced, sweaty, and older than his 58 years. People were still staring, but the look had changed. It wasn't admiration anymore. It was curiosity laced with suspicion. "What did that pilot do?" he heard someone whisper. "Must be drunk." They caught a drunk pilot. He wanted to shout at them. "I'm not drunk. I'm the victim of a setup." But he kept his mouth shut. The weight of Alicia Reynolds' stare still felt like it was burning a hole in his back. They didn't take him to the usual crew lounge. They took him down a service corridor, past the smell of Sbarro pizza and duty-free perfume, to a nondescript grey door marked Authorized Personnel Only. It was a small holding room used by airport security and airline management for sensitive situations. Sitting at a metal table inside was Marcus Vance, the chief pilot. Marcus didn't look angry. He looked profoundly weary. Beside him sat a woman Halloway didn't recognize, someone from HR, no doubt, with a laptop already open. The police officers stayed outside the door. "Sit down, Jeffrey," Marcus said. His voice was flat. Halloway sat. The metal chair was cold. "Marcus, listen. You have to understand. She was insubordinate. She wouldn't stow her bag. I didn't know who she was. If I had known—" "Stop!" Marcus held up a hand. "Just stop lying, Jeffrey. We already pulled the cabin voice recorder audio from the pre-flight buffer. We heard everything. We heard you call her lady. We heard you threaten her. We heard her remain perfectly calm while you had a meltdown because she didn't swoon when you walked in." Halloway paled. The technology. He always forgot the damn technology was always listening. "It doesn't matter that you didn't know who she was." The HR woman spoke up, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "That's the entire point, Mr. Halloway. Dr. Reynolds was testing how you treat a passenger you perceive as having no power. You failed that test spectacularly. You profiled her, you harassed her, and you abused your authority to remove her based on a bruised ego. I've given 30 years to this airline," Halloway pleaded, his voice cracking. "My record is spotless." "Your record," Marcus said, tossing a manila folder onto the table, "is a lie. Since Alicia took over oversight last month, she opened up the archived complaints that my predecessor buried. You have 14 separate complaints in the last 5 years alone. Bullying junior pilots, condescending remarks to female crew, aggression toward ground staff. We ignored it because you were a good stick and you made our on-time metrics look good. We were wrong." Marcus stood up and walked around the table. He stopped in front of Halloway. "Stand up, Jeffrey." Halloway stood, his legs shaking. "Give me your wings." It was a metaphorical request that became literal. Marcus held out his hand. Halloway slowly unpinned the gold metal wings from his blazer pocket. His hands were trembling so violently he almost dropped them. He placed them in Marcus's palm. "And your company ID." Halloway unclipped the lanyard from his neck. It felt like he was handing over his own head. "You are suspended without pay, pending the formal review board on Monday," the HR woman said. "However, given the evidence, I would advise you to contact your union representative immediately and prepare for termination proceedings. Your past travel privileges are revoked effective immediately. You'll have to take a cab home." Marcus looked at the man he had once respected. "Get out of here, Jeffrey. You're trespassing." Halloway turned and walked out of the room. He walked past the police officers. He walked back into the bright, noisy terminal. He had no uniform insignia, no ID, no purpose. He was just an angry old man in a rumpled blazer looking for a taxi in the rain. The karma that hit Jeffrey Halloway in the terminal was personal and immediate, stripping him of his physical symbols of authority. But the karma that hit him over the next 24 hours was of a different species entirely. It was digital, global, and utterly permanent, in the era before smartphones. Halloway's tantrum might have become a piece of industry folklore, a rumor whispered in crew lounges about the time Jeff lost it at a VP. But Flight 922 was not flying in a vacuum. It was flying in the age of total surveillance, where every passenger is a potential broadcaster and every injustice is content. While Alicia Reynolds was calmly finishing her fuel audit somewhere over the mid-Atlantic, sipping sparkling water and ignoring the hushed whispers of the cabin crew, the internet was already adjudicating Jeffrey Halloway's fate. The Broadway producer in Seat 1F, a man named Marcus Thorne, with a Twitter following of 80,000, hadn't just been listening. He had propped his phone against his untouched flute of champagne, the camera lens perfectly angled through the gap in the seats. He wasn't the only one. A tech-savvy teenager in row 4, sensing the tension the moment Halloway stormed out of the cockpit, had started a TikTok live stream. Even a grandmother in 2C had managed to fumble her phone out of her purse and hit record. The footage was uploaded before the plane had even left the gate, using the terminal's 5G signal. By the time Flight 922 touched down at London Heathrow, 7 hours later, the videos had migrated from Twitter to Reddit, then to Facebook, and finally to the morning news cycle. The hashtags were already trending worldwide: pilot meltdown, Atlantic sovereign, do you know who I am, and the particularly biting Captain Karen. The videos were damning not just because of what Halloway said, but because of the visual contrast. The internet loves a hero and a villain, and this cast was perfect. On one side there was Halloway, red-faced veins bulging, stabbing his finger into the air, his body language screaming aggression and entitlement. On the other side was Alicia Reynolds, seated still, her voice modulated to a terrifyingly calm frequency. Thorne's video was the clearest. It was shot in high definition, capturing every bead of sweat on Halloway's upper lip. It captured the exact moment Halloway shouted, "I am the captain of this vessel. You do what I say when I say it." And it captured Alicia's response, which was already being printed on T-shirts by opportunistic Etsy sellers. "Your attitude is not your concern, Captain. Your competence is." When Halloway finally arrived at his small, sterile apartment in Queens later that night, having taken a humiliating Uber ride where the driver had complained about crazy airline pilots, the whole way he was blissfully unaware of the scale of his destruction. He poured himself a glass of scotch, his hands still shaking, and collapsed onto his leather sofa. He assumed he would face a disciplinary hearing on Monday. He assumed the union would fight for him. He assumed he could spin this as a safety concern. Then he turned on the TV. He wasn't watching the local news. He was watching CNN, and there on the screen was his own face. It was a freeze frame from the video, his mouth open in a snarl, his finger pointing accusingly at Alicia. The chyron beneath read, "Our rage in the cockpit. Pilot removed after confronting black executive." Halloway dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, amber liquid soaking into the rug. But he didn't move. He stared paralyzed as the anchor introduced a panel of experts. "It's a classic power play gone wrong," a body language expert was saying, dissecting Halloway's movements with a laser pointer. "Look at how he invades her personal space. He is trying to physically intimidate her into submission because she challenged his authority verbally. It's textbook bullying behavior." "And let's not ignore the racial dynamics here," a cultural commentator added. "He sees a black woman in a position of luxury and immediately assumes she doesn't belong, that she's disruptive for simply existing and reading a document. He demands compliance, not cooperation. It's a microcosm of a much larger societal issue." Halloway felt like he was suffocating. They were talking about him like he was a monster, a symbol of everything wrong with the old guard. They didn't know him. They didn't know his 30 years of safe landings. He grabbed his phone to call his union rep. "Dave." "Dave," Halloway rasped when the line connected. "You seeing this? It's a hit job. We need to put out a statement. Tell them about safety protocols. Tell them she refused a direct order." There was a long silence on the other end. "Jeffrey," Dave said, his voice sounding distant and tired. "There is no we on this one. The National Union Board just held an emergency conference call. They've watched the video. So I was the captain. I have the right to secure the cabin. You threatened a passenger for not stowing a briefcase while the door was open. Jeff, we checked the manuals. You were wrong on procedure, but the optics are fatal. The Union isn't going to touch this. We can't be seen defending this kind of aggression. You're on your own." The line clicked dead. Halloway sat in the silence of his apartment, the TV still blaring his humiliation. His phone pinged. Then again. Then it started vibrating continuously. It wasn't friends. It was the internet sleuths. Someone had found his personal Facebook profile. The comments were pouring in by the hundreds, a torrent of vitriol and mockery. "Nice career, genius. Imagine screaming at your boss like that. Time to retire, Grandpa." He deactivated his account, his fingers fumbling, but it was too late. Screenshots had already been taken. His LinkedIn was next. People were tagging Atlantic Sovereign, demanding to know why he was still employed. The final nail in the coffin came the next morning. It wasn't a press release from a junior PR staffer. It was a video statement released directly to Atlantic Sovereign's YouTube channel and social media platforms. The thumbnail showed Arthur Sterling, the CEO of the Global Sovereign Group. Sterling rarely made public appearances. He was a man of shadows and boardrooms. But today, he was front and center, wearing a dark suit and a grave expression. Halloway watched the video on his iPad, his stomach churning. "We are deeply disturbed by the footage captured on Flight 922. Sterling began looking directly into the camera lens. "The behavior exhibited by former Captain Jeffrey Halloway is abhorrent and diametrically opposed to the values of Atlantic Sovereign. We want to be clear, this was not a safety issue. This was an ego issue." Halloway flinched. Former captain. It was official. "We pride ourselves on the professionalism of our flight crews," Sterling continued, "but we failed yesterday. We allowed a culture to persist where seniority could mask toxicity. We commend the passenger involved for her incredible restraint and professionalism in the face of unacceptable aggression." Sterling paused, and Halloway held his breath. He knew what was coming, but hearing it out loud was a physical blow. That passenger was Dr. Alicia Reynolds, our newly appointed Senior Vice President of Global Operations. Dr. Reynolds was undertaking an unannounced audit of our operations to ensure that our passengers are treated with the dignity they deserve. She identified a critical failure in our leadership culture, and she acted swiftly to correct it. The reveal sent shockwaves through the media. The narrative shifted instantly from rude pilot versus passenger to arrogant employee versus undercover boss. It was the ultimate karma story, perfectly tailored for viral consumption. "Captain Halloway's employment has been terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct," Sterling concluded. "Furthermore, because his actions caused significant reputational damage to the airline, we are reviewing our legal options regarding his severance and pension benefits. We are also launching a comprehensive third-party review of our flight deck culture overseen personally by Dr. Reynolds. We will do better." Halloway turned off the iPad. He sat in the dim light of his kitchen. The phone rang again. It was his ex-wife, Linda. "Jeffrey," she said, her voice sharp, "I just saw the news. My lawyer is asking if your pension is frozen." "Is it?" "I don't know, Linda," Halloway whispered. "I think I lost it all." "Well," she snapped, "I hope it was worth it." He hung up. In the days that followed, the fallout continued to radiate outward. The airline industry, usually slow to change, was galvanized by the incident. The Halloway incident became a case study in crew resource management, CRM, training virtually overnight. Instructors used the video to teach young pilots what not to do, Halloway became the face of the hazardous attitude known as impulsivity and macho. Halloway tried to leave his apartment to get groceries 3 days later. A photographer was waiting outside. He snapped a picture of Halloway in sweatpants, looking unshaven and defeated. The photo ran in the New York Post under the headline, "Grounded for Good." He couldn't escape it. He went to a bar in a different neighborhood, hoping for anonymity. He ordered a beer. The bartender, a young guy with tattoos, looked at him, then looked at the TV above the bar, where a recap of the story was playing on a loop. The bartender put the beer down, then slid it back. "We don't serve people who talk to women like that," he said, loud enough for the other patrons to hear. Halloway left the bar, head down, the shame burning his cheeks. Meanwhile, Alicia Reynolds was back at work. She didn't do a victory lap. She didn't go on talk shows to gloat. She simply returned to her office at Global Sovereign Headquarters. Her assistant, a young man named Leo, walked in with a stack of letters. "Dr. Reynolds," Leo said. "The mailroom is overwhelmed. These are just the ones from today. Most are from passengers thanking you, but there's a lot from pilots too. Junior pilots, female pilots, minority pilots. They're saying thank you for finally taking out the trash." Alicia picked up one of the letters. It was handwritten on lined paper. "Dear Dr. Reynolds," it read. "I am a first officer at a regional airline. I've flown with captains like Halloway my whole career. I thought I just had to take it. Watching you stand your ground gave me the courage to report a captain who has been harassing me for months. Thank you." Alicia folded the letter carefully. She looked out the window at the busy tarmac of JFK, watching the metal birds queue up for departure. She thought of Halloway. She didn't hate him. She pitied him. He was a man who had built his entire self-worth on a uniform and a title, believing that those things gave him the right to belittle others. When the uniform was stripped away, there was nothing left but a sad, angry man in an empty apartment. She turned to her computer and opened the file marked Flight Operations Audit Phase 2. "Leo," she said, her voice crisp and focused. "Schedule a meeting with the Director of Training. We need to rewrite the leadership curriculum. And get me the file on the Atlanta base. I hear there are some issues there too." "Yes, Dr. Reynolds." The audit was far from over. The sky was vast, and there was still plenty of cleaning up to do. The story of Captain Halloway and Dr. Reynolds is a stark reminder that authority is not a shield for bad behavior, and in the modern world, accountability can strike with lightning speed. It's a testament to the power of staying calm when faced with aggression, and the satisfying reality that sometimes the person you underestimate is the one holding all the cards. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude drama and instant karma, please give this video a like, share it with your friends who love a good justice story, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales. Let us know in the comments below, have you ever witnessed a power trip backfire like this? Thanks for watching.